Welcome to NCSS Here for You. For over 50 years, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to quality psychosocial services to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously, and we strive to provide the highest quality services. According to Eric Erickson, a noted developmental psychologist, every person must pass through a series of 8 interrelated stages over the entire life cycle. NCSS provides a continuum of services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. NCSS's purpose is creating a stronger community, one person at a time. Now, let's get to today's show. I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Each month on this program, we discuss a human services topic, and we do that with staff from one of our 3 direct services divisions. Our 3 service divisions are Behavioral Health Services, Children, Youth, and Family Services, and Developmental Services. And on occasion, we have guests from organizations that NCSS collaborates with throughout the year. This month's episode is titled Autism, NCSS Services, and the first annual Autism Walk of Northwestern Vermont. Autism is one of the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral disorders that appear in early childhood. Children with an autism spectrum disorder may have a serious lifelong disability. However, with appropriate treatment and training, some children can develop certain aspects of independence in their lives. Parents support their children with autism in developing skills that use their strengths so that they will feel good about themselves. To discuss autism, NCSS's services, and the first annual Autism Walk in greater detail, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guests. They are Ann Corrigan, Early Interventionist Provider for the Children, Youth, and Family Services Division, Nicole Burnell, Services Coordinator for Developmental Services, Sarah Mowell, who is a parent of a young child with ASD, and Cheryl Underwood, parent of an adult child with ASD. I want to welcome all of you to the program today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, let's start with what is autism?
So ASD, or Autism Spectrum Disorder, is a pretty complex neurological disorder that impacts development. It impacts the way the brain processes information. So it's characterized, people with ASD have difficulties with social communication, social interactions, restricted and repetitive behaviors. They often have restricted interests and activities. Those differences can often be seen when a child is a toddler, between 18 months and 2 years, but it really varies. Individuals with ASD have really unique needs and strengths, so in some children it can be pretty obvious, the symptoms, and others it's really subtle.
And how common is autism?
Autism occurs approximately in 1 in 88, with a slight increase in males given 1 in 54.
Now, how old was your child when first diagnosed?
My son was 4 when he was officially diagnosed, but we noticed signs as early as 2 months, and we were pretty sure at 20 months, but he didn't receive the official diagnosis until he was 4.
Cheryl?
My son was 4 when he was diagnosed with developmental delays. That was 18 years ago. So we didn't get an actual diagnosis of thinking he had autism until 3rd grade, but we did not actually receive a good, strong diagnosis until about 6th grade.
I see. And how do individuals with autism spectrum disorder communicate?
It's actually a really huge range. Generally, young children with ASD develop language later, and they really need to be taught to enjoy interactions with people and to really get the social part of communication, the reciprocity of communication, before they can even be taught that communication is powerful. Some individuals with ASD don't use verbal language. They'll use either some verbal and some combination of things like sign language or picture exchange communication systems or a vocal output device. Then there are other individuals with ASD that are completely verbal, and their language really appears to be typical. They have appropriate grammatical structures and they're easy to understand. But even those individuals often have trouble with the social aspects of communication, so the reciprocity, the back and forth of communication. They often want to talk about what they want to talk about and their interests, topics that are interesting to them.
And isn't that one of the things that makes it so difficult when trying to diagnose, because of the fact that it's not like a cookie cutter process where some young people light affects them where others it doesn't. Some it's sounds. Is that not one of the real critical factors in trying to get one's arms around whether or not a child is suffering with ASD?
Yeah, and the sensory sensitivities is something that I think most people see in individuals with ASD, but it's actually not part of the diagnostic criteria.
I see.
So it looks more at the behaviors, the repetitive behaviors that perhaps have become coping strategies for kids who have sensory sensitivities. So if they really like the way light reflects off wheels, they might spin wheels a lot, or if they like the motion, they might watch that. So that would be considered the repetitive behavior that's kind of based on that sensory interest. But you're exactly right. It's often said in the field or in just an ASD community generally that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's so unique, and definitely their needs are different, but their strengths are different too. So.
Now, what types of activities does someone on the autism spectrum enjoy?
I don't think that that varies from the population at large. They enjoy music, technology, sports, just like any other children and adults. I don't know, maybe Sarah and Cheryl could speak more to that. But
My son's very into the arts and crafts, sewing, music. He loves swimming, walking.
My son is very technically driven, very into computers, video games. Also reading. He loves to read. They all have their own strengths and interests.
So like Nicole said, you know, really when you break it down, it's the interest that a child at that age or surrounding ages would be interested anyway, but it may be just a little different for them because of their circumstances.
A little more high-focused, probably.
Now, what's made the biggest difference in your child?
For my son, it was the help and support from the NCSS staff and the services that were available, and especially Dana's program, the autism-specific program. In the 2 years that he's been with that program, he has thrived, most definitely. That made the biggest impact on him.
And for us, it would be, you know, the services through Northwest Counseling, and speech therapy was a big one for us. And for us, getting him into a school that was private, where they actually focused on autism and social skills that he was lacking.
Now, let's talk about the types of services that are offered through NCSS.
So there's a very wide range, as Sarah had said. We do have a school-based autism program that provides one-on-one support for students in their schools. I work for the early intervention program, so that's the Birth to 3 program, the Part C IDEA program, that if a family has concerns that their child might have autism, we can go out and do screenings and assessments and then make referrals for evaluations. And we also provide the ongoing supports and services for families and children after a diagnosis. And then for other kids who have developmental delays or disorders.
So developmental services is not as diverse as CYF. We primarily offer case management, and we also have the program for adaptive and expressive arts, which offers music, sensory, and art therapies. And then for older adults, there is the Medicaid waiver, which offers housing and community sports and employment and things like that.
And Nicole, you mentioned the program for adaptive and expressive arts. Can you explain that a little more? Because I think a lot of the viewers wouldn't realize how unique that program is, not just at NCSS, but to Vermont and to a lot of organizations nationwide that that deal with the same type of individuals?
So we have a sensory room where individualized sensory therapy is offered, and then, like I said, there is music therapies where either individualized, excuse me, or in a group setting. And then there's also art that's offered, again, either individualized or in a group setting.
Mm-hmm. And it's through those activities where I've heard that, you know, individuals, sometimes there's monumental growth and interest because of those activities that maybe they had not been exposed to before.
Correct.
Now, what is the importance of other siblings in the development of a child with autism spectrum disorder?
I would say understanding your sibling and being patient is very important. My son is a lot closer to his brother now that he's older, and it has made him want to go into and is into the field of developmental services for a career.
I think there's many different things that they offer to their sibling, vice versa, each way.
Mm-hmm.
My son has an older sibling, so that older sibling offers a familiar face in school, some comfort from home. They offer the ability to teach them how to play. When they play together, he's learning from his older brother as they play, learning about emotions and feelings and all that stuff that they need to be around other children to learn from. How to turn taking and, you know, in playing games. These are all life skills that they'll need further on. So there's many things. You could go on and on what they learn from their siblings.
Mm-hmm. But there is that importance of the unit there, that the sibling understands that there are differences,
Definitely.
but yet they're very supportive of.
Definitely.
Another service that NCSS offers that kind of ties in is, that's a fairly new program, is home and community-based supports for children birth to, I think, 22. So somebody can go out to the home and help in the home, kind of doing the work with siblings, and also just doing one-on-one, sometimes taking them out into the community, sometimes they'll go to childcare. So it's a fairly new program that we've started.
And in general, my understanding is that the fact that NCSS offers wraparound services is really, again, not that is the only organization that does it, but certainly one of the few that actually has the ability to do that, you know, both in a school setting, at home, in a community, which, again, I would imagine is critically important to the family.
It is. It gives us a break when they take them out into the community. For moms, it's important that we just get a few minutes to spend with the other child or to do some housework.
Mm-hmm. Now, Cheryl, I understand that you facilitate a parent support group. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
I do. I have facilitated a support group with another mom, Laura Weber, and it's Shadows of the Moon, and we meet the last Tuesday of the month at La Quinta at 6:30 to 8. And we welcome all that live with autism, parents, children. Come visit us or call us. I can be reached at 868-3658 if you would like to join the group or just have information.
Okay, and what's that number again?
868-3658.
And how long have you been doing this?
We have been doing this together for about 10 years now.
10 years. And have you noticed over that time, because of word of mouth and other
Yes.
scenarios, that the group has grown dramatically?
Word of mouth, changing ways of organizations, you know, doing different programs. So just getting information on what's out there.
Okay. Now, NCSS is organizing the first annual Autism Walk this year to raise funds for the much needed services that aren't covered by other funding sources. So how did this idea start?
I actually came forward to Nicole and asked her how we could get one going, because I wasn't aware of any walks within our area that the Franklin and Grand Isle County people would directly benefit from. So it was a simple phone call to Nicole, and then Nicole forwarded that information to you. And now it's happening.
And, you know, from a standpoint of being supportive in the community, certainly we're very excited about this. And we should talk a little bit about what that day is going to represent so that people understand that the walk is the focal point, but certainly not the only thing that's going to be taking place that day. And first of all, the date of the event.
May 18th.
And where?
Collins
Collins
Pearly.
Pearly.
I always make it. I always
So
do it
it's
backwards.
890
Okay.
Fairfax Road in St. Albans.
And besides the walk itself, what are some of the other activities that children who are there are going to be able to participate in that afternoon?
We have the bowling center,
Bowling,
the
Face
face
painting.
painting.
face painting,
Food.
food. Yeah, that's always good. And it's my understanding we'll also have sensory toys, stations. I guess it's better to
Music.
say
Were we doing the
there'll be
music?
separate stations that will be set up around. And the other thing I think that's important that people understand is that this event is going to take place rain or shine, because fortunately, if it's a nice day, we'll be outside on the track, but if it happens to be inclement weather, it will be moved inside to people that are familiar with Collins Pearly. It'll actually be the ice rink area, which is where the event will be held in the event that there's inclement weather. But what we're excited about is the fact that, you know, this is the first annual. When you really think about it, you know, all walks and events have to start somewhere. And, you know, we're very excited to be involved with this, and certainly hope that a lot of individuals will participate this initial year. I don't know if anybody else has anything they'd like to say about the event, or...
I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to come out and see each other after the long winter.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And to network with other families, get to meet other families in a fun setting, hopefully. Hopefully.
Yes, well, it will be a fun
It'll be so
setting.
fun.
Now, if somebody's interested in participating in the walk, how will they receive information? They need to call me, or...
They need to call you to get a pledge form, and your phone number is 524-6555, extension 6414, or they can email you. I'll let you give that. I think they can also go to the NCSS website.
Yes.
So ncssinc.org.
Yes, actually this event has been started to be promoted on our website, as well as Facebook, Twitter. Press releases have gone out, and posters and the actual brochures are being produced as we speak. But I think the important thing is that individuals are welcome. There's no registration fee. People will raise what they can raise. I know that for those individuals that raise $100 or more, they'll receive a free Autism Walk t-shirt. And for those that don't, they can purchase a t-shirt for $12. But certainly there's no registration fee, so people don't have to feel that there's a set amount that they must have to be able to be involved in the day. Well, let's talk a little more about autism spectrum disorder and how it really changes the dynamics in a family. Because certainly there's a point in time where whether someone already has children or they don't have children, and then someone comes into their life who has been diagnosed, how does that change the family dynamic?
Well, for me, it changed by not being able to give both children as much attention as I would have liked to. I had to spend a lot more time with my younger son and just making sure that he was ready for school and doing what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a lot of attention away from my oldest child. So when we did receive some services,
Yes.
it was so much easier to spend a little more time with the older son.
It impacts your whole life. It really affects you in every direction. Making plans to go somewhere, anything like that, you have to think ahead. Is it going to set the child off sensory-wise? You have to make sure you have an escape route, and just everything. No matter what you're planning, autism is always the main focus, and then the rest falls. You always have to make sure that you meet his needs, and hopefully everything falls into place.
And I would imagine, especially in the early period after diagnosis that a lot of those triggers you may not even be aware of because you haven't experienced, you know what I mean? There haven't been enough life events to be experienced to know that something may not be viewed in a positive way because they haven't been in that situation before.
For someone not to know about autism, they just look at our children as being bad or out of control. And they're not aware that the lights were too bright or the sounds in the room were so overwhelming that they just couldn't think.
And from a service standpoint, I know that NCSS years ago started with autism programming, and from that point in time it's grown immensely as far as all the various services that are available. From a standpoint of being a provider of services, what is there anything that gives you the most joy about being able to help these individuals?
I think because I work so closely with families, it's watching, and one of the interventions I get to do a lot with young children with autism is joint attention training, where I'm really trying to help connect parents and children. And with children with ASD, that can be really hard. Sometimes they're not motivated to engage with people yet. So, and we do a lot of videotaping, so I get to kind of relive the moments when kind of the lights turn on and there's a real hug. Or just recently, I watched a little girl run to her mother and give her a hug, which was hugely different from where she was a year ago. But she recognized her mother in that crowd and wanted to be with her and connect with her. And it was so beautiful, because forming that relationship, getting that relationship solid is so important, because they're the people that are with them all day, every day. And sometimes it's not that rewarding if your child isn't smiling at you, isn't hugging you, isn't even looking at you. So to kind of try and get that a little bit in place for families is really exciting. And it takes a long time sometimes.
A lot of people don't realize that that doesn't come naturally for children on the spectrum. It's something they have to work at.
So those moments are, they're huge, they're monumental.
Huge.
For my son, he tied his shoe at 12, and I was so excited. And someone had said to me he should have been doing it earlier, but he couldn't. But they couldn't understand why my joy was there.
Sure.
Or even hearing mommy. I was called EIO for like 3 years.
Really?
And for me, it's connecting families with the services that they need, like Sarah's son with the school-based autism program, so they're allowed to thrive and access the education that's appropriate for them in that circumstance.
Definitely.
And from a standpoint of being parents, and I know you've mentioned one particular moment, Sarah, but what is it like, because I realize that each and every day is different, but when you do have those monumental moments, I mean, realizing you never know when they're going to come, I would imagine. From the family standpoint, how does that affect the family? I mean, after one of those situations has occurred.
It's huge. I think just like any other child, when they hit a milestone, you're happy. You just had to wait longer, so it's that much more.
Sure.
You kind of jump up and down and clap your hands and get all excited. And we're all happy. It's not just the normal mom and dad, yay, that attaboy or whatever, but his brother is proud of him as well, because we've waited so long.
Anything, Cheryl, that...
I just really enjoy it when both my kids come home and there's just so much laughter. It wasn't that when my child was younger, but now they just laugh, and it's just like, wow, I missed this when he was younger because he was trying so hard to learn everything, and just now the laughter is just the best medicine, the best reward.
Now, Cheryl, probably more from your standpoint because your child's an adult now, but how do you see the local community differently as far as what's available? And before, there certainly were barriers because there wasn't a lot of programming back then, but how do you look at our community today versus back then, and how those differences have...
I think getting the word out there on every child is different. Every child has different abilities is great. I see the community now actually rallying around our children where before they didn't. My son is actually in the work field, and his job has been wonderful with him, and I think a lot of it is they understand and they're very patient.
That's terrific.
It is.
And as far as success stories that you've seen from a provider standpoint, is there anything that sticks out as far as a moment or, I mean, I realize there's probably been many, but...
I feel really lucky that there are a lot. Yeah. I think what these families have spoken to is that sometimes what we're looking for are these things that seem tiny in other kids, like, oh my gosh, she said mommy, or oh my gosh, she looked at me and smiled. So we get to celebrate these little things that seem like, oh, that should come for everybody, but it doesn't. So when you really see that happening for a child, it's just amazing.
And I would imagine that the celebration is very important as well because of that milestone. You know, where a lot of times, to a degree, you'll celebrate like the tying of shoes with a young person or what have you, that because of the struggles that they're enduring, that when that does happen, the celebration is probably much greater than it would be under other circumstances. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, because it seems like the mountain is a little bit higher that they had to climb to get there. They had to work that much harder to get there.
My son is sick of me taking out the camera, taking pictures when we get to those milestones. I think, Mom, stop.
Now, speaking of that and taking pictures and what, do you review those often, or is it something that your child's not that interested in as far as after the fact?
He's not that interested in, but I am. So I have a lot of scrapbooks, and it's really good.
Memories.
Yeah, really good to see that those milestones are there later, but they're there.
And I would imagine even like the flash of a camera for some children would be perhaps deemed as disturbing.
Can be, for some.
Now back to the walk for a moment. Let's kind of recap again when that's going to take place. And so May 18th, and registration begins at 12:30, and the walk at 1. And certainly if anybody would also like to volunteer, I know that we're looking for volunteers as well. And once again, they can call 524-6555. And Annie, would they ask for you, or am I wrong?
You're it, I think.
I'm it.
You're it.
I'm it. Okay, so they would dial 6414 then. Okay. All right. Is there anything else that anybody would like to share before we conclude today, whether it has to do with autism spectrum disorder or the services or the walk itself?
Thank Sarah for taking the initiative.
Yes, because
I think the community is excited about it.
Yeah, they very much are, and you know,
I am.
It's one of those situations that after the approach is made and you think about it, you go, geez, why didn't we do this years ago? Because when you think about the fact that NCSS has had autism programming for a while now, and yet we didn't have a walk. I mean, it's kind of like you hit yourself in the head and say, geez, we should have done this years ago. But we really thank you for making us think about this and being able to hopefully have a really successful first year this
I'm thankful it's happening.
This May. So really appreciate you bringing that forward. So I want to thank my special guests, Ann Corrigan, Nicole Burnell, Sarah Mowell, and Cheryl Underwood for being on the show today and sharing their insights on autism spectrum disorder, the services that NCSS provides, and the first annual Autism Walk of Northwestern Vermont. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about NCSS and all of our programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Helko, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You. This has been another episode of NCSS Here for You. We hope that you found today's discussion informative and educational. For over 50 years, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to quality psychosocial services to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families and seniors. Thanks once again for tuning in this month. NCSS's purpose remains creating a stronger community, one person at a time.